Oh man, new dev background. Check it out, guys. We're going to be talking about the COVID-19 pandemic on this channel again for a while. Well, whenever I stop being lazy and actually feel like doing it. And what better way to start a video series on the coronavirus than with the end of it? Remember this article in The Atlantic? Let's Declare a Pandemic Amnesty by Emily Oyster? Yeah, let's check it out. In April 2020, with nothing else to do, my family took an enormous number of hikes. We all wore cloth masks that I had made myself. We had a family hand signal, which the person in front would use if someone was approaching on the trail and we needed to put on our masks. Once, when another child got too close to my then 4-year-old son on a bridge, he yelled at her, "Social distancing!" These precautions were totally misguided. In April 2020, no one got the coronavirus from passing someone else hiking. Outdoor transmission was vanishingly rare. Our cloth masks, made out of old bandanas, wouldn't have done anything anyway. But the thing is, we didn't know. This was not my April 2020 experience. Here's mine. I work from home, so very little actually changed about my daily life. However, when I went on walks outdoors, the city was quite deserted. Also, at least for a while, those walks were illegal, but I didn't care, and nobody bothered me. Enforcement here was lax, but compliance was relatively high. I never wore a mask on the bus, which was free for about 6 months, which was quite nice, nor did I ever wear a mask in a store. Not because I didn't believe they worked, but because I wasn't sick. I've spent some time in Asia. I know about their culture of wearing masks regularly when you're sick and you have to go out. I don't find that objectionable, but I wasn't sick, and I wasn't going to be told to cover my face when I wasn't sick. A few places, mainly grocery stores, told me I had to put a mask on. I told them I wasn't going to. They told me I was required to. I asked them if I didn't, were they going to remove me from the store? They said no, they weren't. So I carried on, and I was left alone. Naomi ended up getting a mask exemption from her workplace due to constant lightheadedness while wearing them. She got a lot of shit from customers for a long time, even though she wore a face shield instead. The attitude of everyone else that I know was annoyance, but ultimately compliance, with older people being way more worried than younger people, sometimes to the point of ridiculousness. It's the Canadian way to not want to rock the boat, and to do what you think will help out your fellow man. And for me personally, it's not that I didn't want to help out other people. It's that, unlike the retard writing this dumb fuck article, I did know. Or at least I had a damn good idea. I had been following COVID for months before it hit Canada. I knew what the symptoms were. I knew what family of viruses it came from, and what those viruses were like. I knew how it generally affected different demographics. And I knew that for the vast majority of us, this was going to be a walk in the park. And all of the insane shit people were beginning to do was going to be looked back on as fucking retarded. And I was right. I was never a conspiracy theorist. I never said COVID wasn't real. I never said don't wear masks because they don't work. I never said inject bleach or take ivermectin or drink a vial of monoclonal antibodies. I never said the vaccines are fake and will rewrite your DNA and destroy your immune system and will cause the 5G network to start beaming marching orders in from Bill Gates. All I said was, I'm not part of the demographic that is likely to have a serious COVID complication, and I don't agree with the government forcing people to wear masks, take vaccines, or present their phone in order to engage in normal everyday behavior, like going to a restaurant. To me, that was government overreach, and I still think so. Even to this day, I still hold the same opinion. The only mandate that makes sense to me are the vaccine requirements for healthcare workers. For the rest of us, though wearing a mask and getting the vaccine is generally a good thing, forcing compliance through passport systems, job loss, or arrests was far beyond what a liberal, individualistic, human rights-oriented society should do. And for this opinion of mine, I was treated like a crazy, horse-pace-loving, anti-vaxxer Trump-tard by Karens who look like fucking this for saying pretty much what Bill Gates is now publicly saying in this clip, even though I said it 2 years earlier.
It wasn't until early February when I was in a meeting that experts at the foundation said, there's no way, there's been too much travel without diagnosis for us to contain this. And then at that point, we didn't really understand the fatality rate. We didn't understand that it's a fairly low fatality rate and that it's a disease mainly of the elderly, kind of like flu is, although a bit different than that.
Most people, when they saw that headline, "Let's declare a pandemic amnesty," laughed their asses off because of just how much shit these people did in the name of public health. Let's go over, real quick, a few of the things that they are asking forgiveness for. There was the initial nonsense of making fun of people who didn't toe the line, mocking anti-vaxxers' deaths as ghoulish, yes, but necessary. There was a collection of headlines like this one floating around, but I lost them, and I'm making this video at 3 a.m., so whatever. You all saw them. You all know what it was. Social pressure to get people to comply. Moving beyond mockery, which in the end should still be allowed, it's free speech, was the outlawing of the sale of certain items in stores. For no real reason. Like why? The stuff is there. It's on the floor. It's just illegal to buy it. The same thing with reduced store hours. All that did is force more people into the store at the same time. There was a lot of policies that did absolutely nothing except serve to make the average person's life harder. Beyond that, though, the amount of social distancing people did and forced on others is just bizarre, looking back on it. For example, you can't have grown adults sitting with their friends.
It's my privilege to have been asked to conduct our service today to celebrate the life of Alan Wright. I therefore offer you all a very warm welcome as we unite in love and friendship to...
And then we get to what schools did to children who didn't want to wear masks. They forced it on them.
Put your mask on. No, you gotta wear it on, honey.
No, you gotta keep it on.
Put your mask on.
There you go. Keep it right there.
Yay, Mason! Yay!
Keep it on, Mason. Look, we're gonna keep it right here. Nope.
They also attached ankle monitors to them to ensure they wouldn't get too close together. They called the cops to arrest kids when they refused to wear them.
We're gonna wait over here.
I'm sorry, he's not able to come unless he has his mask on.
Police officer called police officer to remove a 4-year-old from campus.
But the school district has decided on independently because from what I understand is the numbers within their school district has increased.
Yeah.
So they're basing that decision.
The cops were also called to...
That I might not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Lord, teach me your...
The cops were also called to people's homes if somebody ratted them out for having friends over.
No sinner! Hey! Sinner! Fuck you! No sinner! Fuck you! Hey! Don't put him over!
Il peut plus respirer, arrête! Arrête, il peut plus respirer!
Don't put him over! Stay here! Get the fuck out! Don't fucking do that!
The cops also put down with force people who objected to being treated this way despite having committed no offense. And then there are the people who lost their jobs for non-compliance, though some of them are at least getting them back now. There's the people who died alone because the risk of spreading COVID to a corpse was too great. There's the people who lost their house, their vehicle, and their credit. There's the people who got the vaccine, not because they wanted to, but because their job forced them to, and they ended up being one of the extremely unlucky ones to die of a complication. There's the people whose necessary medical procedures were postponed, and now they suffer tremendously for it. And there's the students who are now permanently set back due to a lack of socialization and the lack of effectiveness of schooling over the internet. And by the reports of some teachers, it does seem to be a far worse problem than we initially thought. Let's return to that original article. There is an emerging, if not universal, consensus that schools in the US were closed for too long. The health risks of in-school spread were relatively low, whereas the cost to students' well-being and educational progress was high. The latest figures on learning loss are alarming. But in spring and summer 2020, we had only glimmers of information. Here's the thing, anybody with an ounce of common sense would have been able to see this coming, especially progressives, who have for decades railed against homeschooling as leaving children socially maladjusted. In the face of so much uncertainty, getting something right had a hefty element of luck. And similarly, getting something wrong wasn't a moral failing. Treating pandemic choices as a scorecard, on which some people racked up more points than others, is preventing us from moving forward. We have to put these fights aside and declare a pandemic amnesty. The issue is, Miss Emily Oyster, is that your camp wasn't the one who was suffering for their wrongthink. Your camp was the one who was dishing out the punishments for it. Your camp was the one who was insisting for 2 years that getting something wrong was a moral failing. This is the abuser calling for amnesty after their abuse has been discovered, because mistakes were made on all sides. And yes, though this is a generalized sentiment, I'm also specifically calling Emily Oyster out on this one, who a year ago was decrying on Twitter how shaming people wasn't working, and therefore how families needed to pressure that one obstinate uncle out of their non-compliance. Also one of her most staunch supporters, Randy Weingarten, a big deal in the American Teachers Union scene, echoed her calls for a pandemic amnesty, after, for 2 years, using her influence in the unions to keep schools closed for way longer than was needed, during which time those unions agitated for wealth taxes, charter school bans, and Medicare for all before they would even consider returning to work, as if those are somehow related to the pandemic. And of course, if you asked any questions about it, you were a racist. Also, those same unions were instrumental in writing school COVID policy, even as the school said the policy came from the CDC. Those unions used their connections to spy on people who disagreed with them. Those unions sued Florida's governor for not bending to their whims. And those unions got on a whole bunch of money, with people at the top of them going on vacations while doing all of this. And now, at the end of 2022, Randy Weingarten is also calling for amnesty and trying to rewrite the past on what precisely her and her compatriots advocated for during the pandemic. Just to be clear, I'm not even saying that the vaccine doesn't work or that you shouldn't get it. That's your choice. I am pro-choice after all. I'm saying that the shift from if you don't get the jab or wear the mask or scan the Vax Pass, you should be fired, censored online, trampled on at protests, arrested for seeing your friends, put into quarantine camps, have your kids taken, be denied medical care, and be left to die, to we were all misinformed, it's not our fault, we didn't know, we were only following orders. That rings hollow. You are trying to gaslight the masses about what the pandemic was, how you behaved during it, and now that you have lost your influence and the tide has turned, you're sneaking up and saying, LOL, look at the wacky Chinese, censoring maskless World Cup fans. You don't get to spend 2 years bludgeoning everybody with the COVID club, only to turn around, adopt your opponent's stance, and then bludgeon the next opponent with the objections made at you now that COVID is over. It would not surprise me in the slightest if the social fabric has been so shredded by the frothing, irrational hatred of these people that the right wing never actually comes back to the negotiating table and begins to trust again the normative institutions of our society within my lifetime. After 2 years of manipulation, gaslighting, lies, surveillance, and physical force, why would they? Whether or not COVID is real, the vaccines are safe, and masking works, and for me the answer to all those is generally yes, the right has no reason to believe them anymore, because for the past 2 years the party line has been, think what we want you to think or we will destroy you, and then them earnestly trying to do it. The whole, please forgive me for trying to destroy you thing is just icing on the cake. That laughter that you hear is from a whole new generation of embittered people, and that is a scary prospect. Also, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter, because like a week later there were calls to segregate yourself from the unvaccinated again. I guess the whole COVID amnesty thing was a limited time offer.